Live everywhere on netrootsradio.com. David Waldman, Kagro, in the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, October 15th, 2021. 5 now already? How did that happen? I'm still writing. All right, well, it's October. I should get used to it by now. Greg Dworkin, all set to join us today. And I don't know, now I feel like I should have gone out and got a special fanfare. But I could just, as I was saying, I could just get out a hammer and a saw and some electrical equipment and probably make him feel right at home that way. Lots to catch up on with him. Lots to catch up on in general. The news itself has been rather crazy, and I've been forced into longer reads and deep dives just to get out of the way of the torrent of, I don't know, I guess small bore-ish stories. I guess we're at the point in our American history where it's in the news, everyone's talking about it, but I don't know what I can tell you about it that's any different than acknowledging the fact that it happened. The Nazi kids are Nazis. I think that's the most widely talked about story online. Somebody got a hold of, I guess, once private chats among the young Republican club leaders from various states, and to no one's surprise, I guess, it's full of racist and Nazi commentary, and that seems to be their favorite topic, is to make jokes that are unacceptably racist. And golly gee whiz, I mean, I hate to dismiss it by saying, well, of course they are, but I mean, of course they are. So anyway, lots of people talking about it. I guess have to acknowledge that it has happened, and it'll color the way we, cover everything, and every time we talk about these things. And of course, I guess every time one of these guys' names gets mentioned in the future, like, they're on the Supreme Court, or they've been, they're leading the Iowa straw poll for president in the next campaign, whatever it may be, or deputy undersecretary for something, whether they start there or just go straight to the top. Well, I guess we can keep a tabs on these guys, I guess. You know what? It was well put, I think, as our Blue Sky now friend Grudgy the Whale puts it. Young Republicans are all Nazis. To say something like that is the kind of claim that would get you in a lot of hot water as a pundit, but would also allow you to fit in great in a young Republican group chat. If you just say it to a bunch of other young Republicans, they say, well, yeah, sure, of course. You say it on the air and tell the truth about what's going on in one of those chats, well, you're just one of those people that are unacceptably biased, and we can't have you on the program anymore. All right. Well, that's kind of where we are in world affairs, I guess. And now, who knows? Let's see. Where are we going to go with this one? Got a lot of, pre-recorded possibilities for ways to bring Greg in, and we'll try. Here's one of his old favorites. Just as a welcome back, we'll go with the old cartoon stuff. That's them cleaning up after the renovation, the sweeping. That's them crumpling up the plans and starting over again, I guess. Nope. All right, that one doesn't happen. All right, Greg Dworkin, how you doing? Are you there? Hit a button. Any button. Oh, dear. On here we had Fractured Fairy Tales.
No, we're good. We're good. I loved it. I was listening to all of it and just getting the last thing lined up.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as
I'm happy to be back. It's great. Yeah, and that bombshell at the end sort of does happen sometimes.
From time to time.
We had the painters in the last few days, and remember, I'm merely remodeling a bathroom shower.
Yeah, I mean that's how
this has now taken 5 weeks and going into week 6 because we're waiting for parts to come.
Yeah.
Oh, and while they're here, since we're waiting for the parts to come, how about this other bathroom here? You think you can fix that wall? Oh, now that we fixed it, we have to paint it. Oh, downstairs we have this other bathroom, and the heater's falling off the wall. Could you fix that? Yeah, we got to take the heater off, and that means getting the electrician in.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
Well, fine. We'll do all those things since we're waiting for parts. The parts finally came. The last part came.
All right. Well, that's good news.
It's in the plumber's hand, and he'll be here Thursday. So I'm really hoping by
Uh,
next week we're back to normal.
would be good. I was thinking it's like it's getting to be time to. We'll just send in what's his name from Argentina with the giant chainsaw and just
Right,
he'll rip it all apart.
so I got some stories to tell you
Yeah. Okay.
about
Good.
this.
I
Not
would
just
think so
construction
after all
stories,
this
but
time.
political stories.
Oh. All
But
right.
first, a construction story.
Okay.
We have a tile downstairs. It's a very modest raised ranch, and we put tile downstairs so I could make one of the side rooms into my office, my broadcast studio here,
Uh-huh.
which I work out of. And last night, when I was just cleaning up and turning the lights out, I noticed there was some white latex paint on the floor on the tile. Easy to clean up. But
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out how it got there
Hmm.
because these guys are just so good. They're so meticulous. They take such care with their drop cloths and all that sort of stuff. So this
Hmm.
morning I got up and the first thing I do in the morning is brush my teeth and start the water for coffee. And the second thing I do is go downstairs and uh, pat Abby's belly and get her outside. And I
Okay.
noticed there was paint on her nose. And I look a little
I'm beginning
closer,
to
and
think.
she's old, and so she's starting to turn white around her muzzle and such, but
Sure.
her claws
Well,
were even
now.
whiter than usual. And
Hmm.
they were covered with white paint. So I found the culprit. She couldn't deny it, no matter how much she wanted to. And I found out
Ah.
how I got paint tracked all over the house, which
Okay.
I've now cleaned up. I've cleaned up her claws. Next time, I think I'll do it in pink. I think she'll like that, or maybe, you know,
Yes. Darth
uh,
says not guilty.
yeah,
So.
semi-gloss red, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So, it's this project is involving everybody.
Yeah, I guess so. Right. Okay. Well, that's a fun story. Yeah. I found out who did it. Like, okay.
Who
Well, they
did it?
didn't.
Who done it? It was a good who done it.
And
Murders in
she
the building. I
painted
found out who
Antifa
did it.
rules on the, and we
You
photographed it.
can't
Nancy
deny
Mace
it.
said, it was horrible.
Nancy May said it was MTG and vice versa.
Right.
But the other and perhaps deeper story
Yes. Important. Important voice.
comes with it's kind of a longish story, but I think it's important. So I
All
got
right.
over the course of the 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, you count them up: the carpenters, the painters, the shower door guy,
Ah, all right. Okay.
the electrician. There's always somebody, the plumber, plumber's assistant, assistant to the plumber's assistant. You add them up. I probably
Deputy
had about 10
undersecretary,
guys
acting
coming in.
plumber. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Lieutenant junior plumber, all those guys.
Okay.
And this is Connecticut, and this is, Newtown.
Acting Connecticut.
And so I would say maybe 7 out of 10 of the guys who come through are basically Harris voters. One guy
Oh,
who doesn't
huh.
like to talk politics, but I know he's a Harris voter. At least he's not a Trump voter. And then we
Okay.
got
I
two
mean,
Trumpies.
okay.
Okay.
You're gonna have that.
One of them
Yeah.
is, and they're both super nice guys who
I mean, that's a pretty
one I
good
just
mix,
met,
actually.
and the other I've known for like 15 years
Okay.
because we've done various and
Because
sundry
he's been
projects.
working on the shower for 15 years.
Yeah, a different shower,
Oh,
different,
well, all right. Yeah.
right? And
Sure.
so we don't know each other enough so that I know their politics, but we know each other enough so I know how many brothers and how many kids he has.
All right.
Because, like, family, it's always about
Yeah.
family. And that's part of the story. So I don't generally initiate political discussions with people I don't know that well because you never know.
uh Yes, I
But,
would be
one
careful.
of these guys says to me, so I don't know where your politics are. And I said,
Hmm.
well, it's pretty easy to figure out. I can't stand Trump.
Yeah.
And he
Well,
looks
that
at
could
me
be
and says,
anything now.
huh, interesting. Because I said, why? You like Trump? You like the person Trump? And he said, no, 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 I don't like Trump. You can't like Trump.
He won't let you.
You can't.
Yeah.
But I like what he does. Now, this guy
Hey.
happens to be an immigrant, and he talks with a very, very heavy accent.
Are you sure he
And
said this?
yeah,
All right. I mean,
and
it's not that
and
heavy.
his English is excellent, and he's been here for 25 years, and very reminiscent of what some of the patients used to tell me in the office when we would talk politics.
Hmm.
And he says, I like a lot of the stuff he does. And I said, no, you don't really. He
Okay.
said, he said, what do you mean? I
You're
said,
giving him a
you like
pass.
what he says. I kind of like what he
Ah,
says, but you don't really like what he does.
all right. I mean,
I said,
I don't like what he
what's
says
the
either.
biggest issue for you? He goes, well, immigration and the border. You know, I hate Biden because Biden just opened the border and let everybody in and said, come here, everybody come in. It was terrible. And Trump is shutting the borders
Uh,
down and now nobody's coming in.
I mean,
I said, okay, I get that. I understand. But how about the part where you got masked guys running around in vans pulling people off the street, some of them American citizen and Army veterans,
uh,
and they
yeah,
disappear? What do you think about that? He said, I don't like that.
yeah.
But
Me
in a
neither.
war, sometimes,
What?
innocent people get hurt. I get that. You got to do what you got to do sometimes. I said, really? I said, you have to understand I'm about 25 years older than you. And he said, yeah, what's that got to do with it? And I said, well, I came of age during the Vietnam War. Oh, yeah, it was a terrible war. Nixon was awful. And I said,
Where
yeah,
did he
I
learn
get
that?
that. But do you remember a place called My Lay? Do you remember the story? It mightn't have been at that village. It might have been some other village. I don't even remember anymore. But some, young army lieutenant said we had to burn the village down to save it. You remember that
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, I remember that. And I said, well, that's what happens when you go too far with, you don't have to worry about the innocents. The next thing you know is you're burning villages down. And how's that going to win hearts and minds and all of that? He
Hmm.
said, yeah, I get that. I get that. I sort of understand that. And I said,
Yeah. Really?
besides, it's
You
about
think?
family. I mean, we talk about your family all the time and your kids and stuff. These are families. The kids are being snatched off. How would you feel if your kid was snatched off the street? He said, no, no, I don't like that. I said, that's why I say you like what he says. You'd like him to round up all the criminals and the people who jump the line and all that stuff and get rid of them. But you don't like what he does because what he's doing is really not good. And he said, okay, all right, I can understand that. But there are some
Okay.
things I hate. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, for example, I hate Tony Fauci. He's a criminal. He ought to be locked up. Throw the king. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what did he do? And he said, well, first of
You
all,
already have a problem. Like, really, yeah, worst criminal in history. Can you even tell me what he did? Like, all right,
yeah, well,
some
he
major
did two
divides here.
things.
Yeah.
He pushed this vaccine too fast, and he told us to wear masks and not masks and not masks and not masks and masks and not masks, and he's making billions from it.
Maybe he can give some to us.
And I said, really? Hey, let me tell you a story. Back in the day, back in the, and I've bored Kagro in the morning readers for years about this. Back in 2006, 2007 era, I was in Washington. I was working with the government trying to figure out what to do about pandemics. And I was working with Tony Fauci. I know him.
Mm,
I said, yeah, really? You work with
famous
Fauci? I
billionaire.
said, yeah, I did. And I'll tell you something about Tony Fauci, which I think you'll understand. Did you ever meet somebody who could never admit that they didn't know something and they could never admit they were wrong? And he said, yeah. I mean, I got people I work with that are, I got people in my family
Right.
who are like that.
Sure.
And I said, sure. Do you think they need to be in jail? Because that's Fauci's problem. Yeah, he said we should not wear masks and then we should wear masks. He got some stuff wrong during the early AIDS era, but he's not making billions. That's not true. That's just garbage. What he did is that he didn't admit he was wrong when he was wrong, and he didn't admit he didn't know when he didn't know.
Mm.
But you don't put somebody in jail about that. You don't lock them up and throw away the key for 20 years. And you say, huh, oh, okay, all right, I can buy that. I can buy that.
He's a juror. Okay.
And
He can be
and
convinced.
my point is, we talked a lot about those issues. I didn't change my opinions much,
Hmm.
but I got him around to, okay, I can understand that. I can understand that. And the whole point here is you plant seeds, you let them grow, you talk about it a little while. So this conversation's going on even longer than this conversation's going
No,
on. We talked about for about 2 hours about
this
this.
is the short version.
Yeah. So finally, at the end,
Did he bill you for this time?
uh, probably.
You will find out.
Well, I
Okay.
was paying anyway because
All
he's,
right.
he's he's doing stuff.
All
So
right.
this
Contract
this was
fee.
a
That's
freebie.
fine.
This was
Yeah, yeah.
extra on the
You're
site.
right.
But that's part of the story too.
Are you
So
thinking he's billing like a lawyer? No.
yeah. So you know, so at the end says, we talked about a lot
You
of this
should bill him.
stuff,
Yes.
and you and I agree on a lot of this. I said, I know we do, and he said to me, in your heart of hearts, you're probably a Republican.
Yeah.
And I said, actually, as I'm
Mm,
listening to this, I
mm,
realize you're a good family man. You care about people. You don't want the wrong thing done. You just want, kind of justice done. That's all. In your heart of hearts, you're actually a Democrat. He
mm.
clutches his chest and goes, oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh, my heart. I don't know if I can take this. I met a nice Democrat. I met a Democrat I like. And so
Yay.
for the whole rest of the day, every time I saw him doing something, I'd walk up to him and says, "You need some coffee? How's your heart? Can you take it?"
Yeah, right.
And the next day, he comes in and says, I really was thinking about that talk we had yesterday. I said to my daughter when I got home that night, last night,
Mm.
I said, I had something that really hit my heart yesterday. Oh, Dad, are you okay? You all right? Is everything okay? He said, No, no, something really, really hit my heart. I found a Democrat I like. I'm processing this. I don't know what to do with it. And so the
All
moral
right,
of
all
the
right.
story is you could hate Trump. You don't
I
have to
will.
hate all Trump voters. Some of them are absolutely flat out Nazis, like with the story about the 20 to 40-year-olds. These are
Yes, we
not
don't want
kids that
them.
Politico highlighted
Oh,
about
oh, good
those
point. Good point.
exposed chat rooms with young Republicans,
Yeah,
young
they're
being a
not.
relative term,
That's true. Good point there. Yeah,
right?
we should not let
But
ourselves be
uh,
fooled.
but not all Trump voters are the same. And
No.
you're not
Well, of
out
course
there to
not.
convince somebody that you're right. You're just there to plant seeds and let it
Brain
process
worms,
and let
possibly.
some other messenger bring it in. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because the this one of the big stories I want to talk about today is called "Bringing a Survey to a Gunfight."
All right, that's a step
It's by
back.
Anat Shenker-Osario, who's really good.
Yes, we
Uh,
see him all
her
the time, all over. Or
her
her.
her
I'm sorry.
expertise
What am I
is
saying?
messaging,
Yes.
and she says,
If we saw the picture better, then we would know. Okay.
"Yeah, but what she's doing is she's talking about the difference between what she calls Pollingism
Pollingism.
and magnetism."
Oh boy, I'm lost. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, right, and these are new terms. I said, "Boy, that's interesting. What's going on
Yeah,
here?"
write a book.
Okay.
It's coming.
Pollingism. The dominant
That
democratic
I
model
get.
views voters as rational individuals who make electoral decisions, including whether to vote at all, based on
Hmm.
conscious preferences about issues. Advocates of this model believe that polling outcomes within controlled survey environments equate real world success, that winning and testing corresponds to winning in the real world. And
Hmm.
it's known by the names. The most apt moniker is pollingism, as it assumes voters' issue preference are static, discernible via polling, and hold ultimate sway over their voting behaviors in candidate selections. Pollingism doesn't come with a set agenda. It relies on discerning voters' registered preferences because it views the political task as winning elections and treats the work of governance as something to be hashed out later. In a way, she didn't write this, but in a way,
Oh.
it's people who stick the finger to the wind, see where the public wants to go,
Hmm.
and runs out in front of the parade to lead.
Okay. Yeah. We. It's a familiar story. Sure.
Pollingism proponents believe data shows what voters really think and what people who work in politics wish they thought. But the problem with it is you only get answers to the questions you ask, and you only get reactions to the ads you produce, and it's all in an artificial environment, and it doesn't always work.
All right.
Now, an alternative worldview understands
This is
voters
the
as
one I
social
don't get.
beings driven by unconscious clues whose opinions, beliefs, and behaviors are formulated within the context of relationships and dominant discourse. Now, think about that discussion we just had with the Trump voter. The
Hmm.
repeated refrains of friends, family, and trusted messengers, voters' identities, these hold the greatest sway in the elections. The model views political persuasion, even in the sprint of electoral campaigns, as occurring through diverse mechanisms, including offline interactions, media narratives, and social movements. This approach, which I call magnetism,
Yes.
prioritizes establishing the right conversation rather than reacting to terms set by the opposition. Magnetism is a notion that if you want people to come to your cause, you have to be attractive.
Hmm. Okay.
This, of course, requires
I
having a
can
cause to
understand that.
which to draw people. And like any magnet, it also means having a polarity that distinguishes you from your opposition. Now, obviously, Trump does the magnetism thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes Democrats too much do the pollingism, and her point is
Mm.
magnetism is far stronger.
Okay.
So,
Now we
in
know
short, she
magnets, how they
says
work.
the first step to winning an election is making it about what you can win on.
Yes. Now, I
It
think that's what
doesn't
the
mean making it
pollingists are
about
looking
what the
for.
public thinks they want.
All right.
It's the difference between leading a parade and running out in front of the parade. And I'll give you two examples where I think that falls. One is Obamacare.
Hmm.
Obamacare was unpopular.
It
Our
was.
pitch was, yeah, but it's good. Do it, and it'll become popular because it's good. And that's true, and that's what happened, and that's where we are now, and you can't get rid of it. And Republicans are finding that out the hard way, including with the shutdown.
All right.
If you just went by pollingism, you'd say, well, the people don't really want that, so we're not doing it.
Hmm.
So that's
Okay.
one example. You got to lead, and then you got to spend all your effort and talent and money and time convincing people, whether you show it to them in terms of results or otherwise persuade them through family that what you're doing is actually good, not bad. And people will come around and change their mind. You plant seeds.
All right.
Now, the other tiny, smaller example that I'm going to use is, of all people, Chuck Schumer.
Okay. I
He
think we're
is
excited
holding
about that.
steady in the shutdown. It is not popular. You can't look at the shutdown and say, this is popular with the public. It may be popular with the base. It may be understood by the base in terms of why you have to do it, even if they don't love it.
Hmm.
But Schumer's actually leading on this, and Jeffries
Okay.
too, to a smaller extent. But it's really Schumer because this is what's going on in the Senate, and the Senate is the key here.
We're the only ones there.
Well, yeah, everybody else has been sent home, and Mike Johnson is a lying weasel and that doesn't have the backbone to do anything. But the point is that Schumer isn't going by poll-tested strategy. He's picking something he thinks he can win on, he thinks is important. He's sticking to his guns,
Hmm.
metaphorically speaking, and it's working.
Okay.
Okay. And so all of that is in the context of my next set of stories
Ta-da.
because
Yes.
they're about Zohran Mamdani.
Hey, he feels like a magnet guy.
Yeah. So Michael Lang had this really nice piece in the Narrative Wars, co-written with Armin Thomas.
Hmm.
He is fresh, everyone else is tired. And listen to this intro. This hook caught me right away. New
Hmm.
York City is headed in the wrong direction. A reform candidate emerges untethered to the city's political machines in the mold of Fiorello LaGuardia. Handsome, dynamic, he excites tens of thousands of volunteers, aided by a left-leaning third party. Raised on Manhattan's Upper West Side, his ethnic background and upper-class upbringing are considered liabilities by the political class. On the campaign
Hmm.
trail, he's accused of sympathizing with commies. Young
Hmm.
voters disillusioned by war flock to the polls. Trailing until the final days, the candidate consistently walks the streets of working-class neighborhoods, shaking hands with passerbys. In victory, the press credits a relentless work ethic and appetite for new blood. The quote is, "He is fresh while everyone else is tired."
Hmm.
The progressive mayor-elect is hailed as a national model and avatar of what's possible. And then, of course, he adds, I'm not talking about Zohran Mamdani, of course. I'm
Oh.
talking about John Lindsay.
Hey. All right. Well.
And then he
Okay.
goes into
Things have
the whole
happened in the
Lindsay
past.
coalition, what happened. And I'm a native New Yorker, so I know these names, although they may be unfamiliar to many. Running for re-election in 1969, Lindsay lost the Republican nomination to a guy named John Markey,
Hmm.
Marchi, John Markey, an unknown and uninspiring state legislator from Staten Island, 6% of the voting population. A
Even
triumph
then.
not rooted in oratory skill or campaign prowess, but solely because Markey was the non-Lindsay.
Yeah. Hey, I'm
On the
from Staten
Democratic
Island.
side,
Okay.
uh, the Democratic primary was won by Comptroller Mario Procaccino.
Really? My
We are
favorite
talking
drink.
about ethnic politics in New York.
Holy mackerel, yeah. I thought
Okay.
we were talking about something you got at Starbucks.
And well, that actually came up
Oh ho.
because that's the way you describe it now.
Yeah.
But Mario Procaccino is running against John Lindsay's pitch at the time.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
Lindsay won this election. It was a three-way, if this sounds familiar to anybody, because that's what's happening now with Curtis Lewa and
Ah,
Andrew
yeah.
Cuomo and
Okay.
Zohran Mamdani. But uh, John Lindsay wins, and Mario Procaccino, a man of the people, conservative Italian from the East Bronx, says the difference between the two of us, I'm not quoting here, I'm just doing this from memory. The difference between the two of us is Lindsay is supported by the beautiful people, and I'm supported by the stoop sitters.
Okay. Yes.
The guys who sit out on their stoop because, they talk and have coffee and, maybe they play bocce in the street while everybody else is playing stickball. Those are the people that vote for me.
Yeah, I guess so.
And at the time, liberalism was a little bit in retreat, but Lindsay won. And he won by just tirelessly out-campaigning everybody else. And the downfall for Lindsay wasn't the reforms he was trying to do, although everybody in power in New York hated that.
No.
He wanted to put civilians on the police review board,
What?
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, good thing.
The thing that killed Lindsay's chances was a sudden snowstorm he wasn't expecting. He wasn't prepared, and it took 5 or 6 days to clear the snow. And that was the end of Lindsay's career.
Well, that's your fault. Yeah, that'll do it in New York. That and a bad deli order.
Right. But when you think about what's going on now with Mamdani, very, very reminiscent. So I got some Mamdani stories for you for after the break.
Okay.
But Mamdani's about magnetism.
Yeah.
You have to be attracted to the candidate, and the candidate then has the chance to persuade you that some of the things that he's for that you didn't think he was for are okay because he's okay.
Okay.
And that's how magnetism works. It's not the same thing as Pollingism.
I get it now. That at first it sounded like we were going to get some very weird and convoluted story about it. It now makes some sense. I think I can get my head around that. It's no soccer momism, but I think it's a good subject for a book. Probably a better book than the soccer mom one. All right, we'll be right back after this.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We'll see how how easy it is to fix things in post. Yeah, a little bit of soundboard trouble. Got our music started late, but hopefully we've corrected for it. And so we're back. We were discussing the two competing models, which I'm sure can be blended harmoniously into a successful campaign by someone at some point. But interesting. I thought it was going to be a little more confusing, but you've cleared it up for me, Greg. Thank you.
Well, let me give you one more little tidbit.
Everything's fine.
From
Let's
Anat's article here.
Okay.
And she labels this section, if you want to touch a nerve, you have to touch a nerve.
Well, all right. That sounds like
pretty
sensible.
When you recognize that the first task of persuasion is to get heard, but also believed, vote choice during election time may not be the most illuminating question. Topics that seem toxic and messages that fail to move can prove effective under repeat exposure. And I got a local story about
clarification. Okay.
One of the guys I was talking to yesterday about politics, not the one I told you a story about, different one.
You were busy.
Said, it reminds me of a story. Said a friend of mine was just driving, local guy was driving, and he saw this teenager throw some garbage out of the window onto the highway. And I pull over next to him and I say, "What the hell are you doing? What are you throwing garbage out of your train? You don't do that. That's not right." And the teenager gives him the finger and speeds off. And he's
What?
telling
No
the
way.
story to my friend, and my friend said, "Well, that was a waste of time." And the guy said, "No, I planted the seed."
Ah,
He's going to think twice the next time he goes to throw out the window. He doesn't want some old guy driving up to him
that's
and
true. He does not.
yelling at him. Maybe he won't throw something
Hmm.
out the next time. You don't know. You got to do these things.
That's a good explanation. Also, I guess, the kid gave you the finger because he was embarrassed. He got caught.
Yeah, exactly. So saving face is a whole lot about a lot of the conversations we have
Okay.
about politics, and that's why you got to be a little delicate about, you know, if you're stuck in a situation, you can
Hmm.
always just say, "Look, it's always about family, isn't it?" And then nobody's going to argue with that, and then you can like tone it down
That's
and
hard to.
bring it right back.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. So sure, it's hard to disagree with it. Well, yeah, family. That's good. We love that. Except if you're a
So
40-year-old
Anat
Nazi.
writes, when you recognize the first task of persuasion is to get heard and also believe, topics that seem toxic and messages that fail to move at first contact can prove effective under repeat exposure. For
Hmm.
example, John
Hmm.
Kerry and swift boating.
All right. I didn't know we
Attempts
were
to
getting
attack
there.
Kerry's military record tested badly. You might say polled badly. It didn't make voters appear to favor draft dodger George W. Bush, but
Okay.
there's a reason why swift boating is now a verb. The noxious repetition of Swiftboat delivered by an
Hmm.
AstroTurf group that allowed Bush to seem blameless chipped away at Kerry's credibility and his moral high ground on the Iraq War, compounded with flip-flopper videos of him windsurfing. It sealed Kerry's fate as an
Hmm.
elite, effete, untrustworthy character in contrast to the straight-talking beer buddy Bush. Bush and his crew had a strategic
Wouldn't
goal:
drink.
discredit Kerry's war record, and it stemmed from their own candidate's weakness, and they pursued that in service of winning the election, and it worked. Another example, critical race theory in Virginia. When
Hmm.
Virginia voters first heard it and
Oh,
wouldn't have
oh.
made it the top list, it helped land Glenn Youngkin the governor's mansion once Republican operatives didn't just deploy it in ads, but engaged it in surround sound strategy deployed by angry moms for liberty in televised
Hmm.
school board meetings. Again, AstroTurf stuff.
Yeah.
Another example of doing that on the other side is widespread engagement of gay and lesbian marriage. If you're going to do pollingism, you'd never support this because at the time it
Hmm.
wasn't that popular.
True.
But you got to lead.
Yeah. All right.
So, what do you do?
Hmm.
You actually not just lead, you have to change the context of where these things come up,
Hmm.
right? It's not a matter of whether or not gays have a right to do this, that, or anything else. It's about freedom.
Okay.
It's about family,
Hmm.
right? Love is love. Love makes a family.
Yeah. One of
And they
the.
found a new way to persuade people by running on and not from their
Hmm.
values,
Ah.
despite what testing appeared to indicate. So you don't optimize what momentarily moves an engaged audience in an artificial situation. Messages that tend to rise to the top in channels are those that sound like a reasonable adult giving you an argument, and that rarely works to get you to stop scrolling long enough to receive a message in the first place. You got to go the other way, depend on the choir, not the candidate.
Hmm.
That's one of the reasons why everybody got so mad at people who were dissing Kamala Harris. And one of the reasons New Yorkers are so mad at the head of the state Democratic Party who won't
Well,
support
that's always
Mamdani.
happening.
He's supposed to be part of the choir. Instead, he's just being a jerk.
Hmm.
And there's a reason for why he's being a jerk. And this comes from a New York Times Magazine piece about Mamdani, which was great. Astrid Herndon wrote this piece over the weekend for New York Times Magazine. Inside the improbable, audacious, and so far unstoppable rise of Zohran Mamdani. And he talks about interviews with him and how he spoke with people, some of the power brokers he used to at least have discussions with the real estate folks and some of the New York power brokers and how that all works.
Hmm.
Uh, and, how he reframes his positions. And he also talks about uh, how he stands out. And he writes, Mamdani stands out further against the backdrop of Democratic Party failure. The party enters the second Trump era devoid of galvanizing leaders and meaningful policy ideas, largely rudderless and certainly visionless. In June, a Reuters Ipsos poll showed that 60%, more than 60% of Democrats want fresh leadership. New, not tired, I might
Oh,
add.
yeah. That's the fresh
Amid
part.
a wave of soul-searching and inter-party warfare that's been unleashed since the embarrassment of the 2024 election loss.
All right.
Bernie Sanders thinks Mamdani's running a brilliant grassroots campaign. You'd think Democrats would be jumping up for joy. Thank God this is the future of the party. But there's others who look at it differently.
Yes.
And he talks about how Mamdani's good at stuff, like he's a talent. He's good at interpersonal politics that Bernie Sanders isn't good at, but he loves a rope line like Joe Biden. He loves a selfie like Elizabeth Warren. He stays until the end of church services. And
how does he stay
at
on
New
schedule?
York's West Indian American Day Parade, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, also a Brooklynite,
Yeah.
who, by the way, has still withheld his endorsement, made a pointed distinction between Jerk Chicken Brooklyn and Starbucks Brooklyn.
Oh.
And Mamdani moves easily through both.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And
well, he eats it. That's the part. That's if you just
Mamdani
try
talks
it.
about, how his faith and his upbringing helped position him to where he is. And Herndon writes, at that moment, I better understood the outsize reaction to Mamdani's rise among the people used to having power and money and among some in the Democratic Party and in their leadership. It's not just what Mamdani believes in or that he was increasingly likely to occupy City Hall. It's that he may have the temperament and public support to sustain the political coalition past January's inauguration. He may effect meaningful change to policy and legislation. Stardom isn't what's inherently threatening. Competence is.
Well,
so if you got somebody with
problem.
magnetism who can deliver, that's scary to people in power because, okay, so the Democratic Party isn't supporting me. Screw you. Again, this goes back to Fiorello LaGuardia and that wonderful musical Fiorello, which will teach you everything you need to know about politics. The song "The Bum Won," where the political machine didn't support him, he won anyway, and now they don't know what to do because they feel like Mamdani's not going to give them, in this case, LaGuardia is not going to give them the patronage they thought they deserved.
Yes.
What do we do with him? I got to go, apologize to all the people that I wrote notes to saying sorry he lost.
Yeah, well, it's a pastime. You got to deal with it.
Right.
It is. That is interesting.
So you put those concepts, Pollingism and Magnetism, and then you look at Mamdani's campaign and you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's another interesting thing that came from that article. Richie Torres, the Bronx Democrat and frequent critic of progressives, said Mamdani is a once-in-a-generation communicator. He's mastered what he calls the 3 threes.
Oh. All right. What are they?
Right. People have to remember, David Waldman used to write little catchy things for ad campaigns. So he's really into these little sayings,
3 threes. I don't know about loving that
catchy
one,
things.
But we'll see.
A candidate in today's day and age needs to be able to explain ideas in a 30-second vertical social media video, like on TikTok. 30 seconds, a 3-minute television hit, and a 3-hour podcast.
Wow.
So those are your 3 threes. Considering their ideological differences, which are particularly stark, I asked why the congressman had been so complimentary of Mamdani publicly and privately, and he said he reached out to me.
Oh, well, that's just a 1, not a 3, but okay.
Yeah.
There were 2 people involved. That's 2 plus 1 is 3. How about that? That one thing by 2 people. I don't know.
And he talks about some of Mamdani's past and how, he did things as a Democrat and this, that, and everything else. But, there's things he said that people don't really care about. His base would love, this is true. His base would love him to continue doing what he's doing in terms of speaking out about justice for Palestinians, not Hamas, Palestinians.
Yeah, well.
And it actually fits into the entire country's feeling now, which wasn't true then, even a year ago, that they're losing faith in Netanyahu and his leadership of Israel and where Israel's at in the Gaza war. Again, another example of leading rather than following the polls.
All right.
And they talk about how, for example, he worked with Brad Lander, his Jewish comptroller, and co-endorser. We endorse each other during the primary and how that worked. Um, and Jerry Nadler, who supported Mamdani and all of that. And basically, Mamdani said, you can like whatever you like and you can do whatever you want to do, but you have to win in order to, do any of this stuff.
Right.
And again, that's just the summation of what we always say on the show, which is to say, I always say on the show, I love policy, but it's really about politics because if you don't get the politics right, you can't get close to doing policy.
Right.
So
Always
he's
true.
there. He's got that. He understands all of that.
Got it. Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Now, for the city's old guard, Hakeem
Oh, dear.
Jeffries' antipathy to the DSA is not without merit, Democratic Socialist Association or whatever they call themselves.
Socialism of America.
For years,
I
the
believe.
organization represented the worst of the
America.
Bernie bros. Overwhelmingly white, male, elite school degrees. They'd be happy to tell you about, never stop telling you about.
Oh, dear. All right. Well,
They posted about politics and rarely participated in actually doing anything.
okay. Once upon a time, I guess. Sure.
Julia Salazar, the first DSA member elevated to Albany in 2018, said the organization's grown from its past. Mamdani has shown how, with the right candidate, the organizational model works. But, people have long memories, especially politicians, and they just don't love the environment that Mamdani came out of. And they, sort of attach that to him, whether he agrees with it or not. And that's just the way it is.
Oh.
It's like moving to California and they hear that you're a New York City Democrat, and so therefore they think they know everything about you.
Okay, yeah, that'll happen too. Right.
So it's all good. And then a follow-up article, 5
didn't know it was
takeaways
all
from
so
this magazine, if it's too long and you don't want to read it.
Let's see.
Mamdani spent the summer and fall in a charm offensive. It's working because everything in New York is about a smile and ethnic street food.
Yeah.
One of Mamdani's most significant shifts is on policing, and he's moderated on that. Despite Mamdani's pivots toward the center, there's still some issues he's unwilling to budge on, and one of them is Palestinian rights.
Mm-hmm.
Mamdani's race has become a stand-in for the larger tension within the Democratic Party in the wake of the 2024 presidential election, and that is so true. Establishment Democrats are most fearful not of losing this election, but of losing their power. Well,
they're not going to lose the election. They're going to win that election. They just it doesn't help them.
Right.
I'm glad
Mamdani would be
won,
the first
but why
Muslim
am I not
mayor in
getting
New York City's
stuff?
history. Some worry that could expose him to violence. Didn't happen in London, and I don't think it'll happen here, but you never know. Not in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, there are crazy people, but that's kind of, we've got that. We have a mechanism for dealing with it.
Right.
Police.
So
Which,
all interesting
so
stuff.
Maybe that's what moderated him. Okay. Yeah. It's been exciting to watch and very skilled, and an interesting, I like the reminder that, yeah, maybe it isn't the greatest. There is certainly a class of people who think, well, how can we do the things that will make us popular? Well, why don't we go ask people what they're thinking, and then we'll do those things. But yeah, if they're really telling you, well, here are the answers that have civic virtue and are supposedly okay to say are top of mind, and what really motivates us. Do they really motivate us? No, I'd like to get off the phone with you right now. That's what motivates me. Sure. Well, what are your choices? I'll take one of them.
So let me go back to the guy I was talking about politics with.
All right.
At one point in the conversation, because mostly what he was talking about is Biden and immigration and the border.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, and I said, listen, there's two things as a general broad rule that Americans care about.
Not three, but two.
Two.
Yes.
Rule of three. Here's the two things.
All right.
Oops, I can't remember the third.
There you go.
The one is, immigration and the border and getting that right. It's obviously a big issue, and it's directing election stuff. And the other is the economy. And you could talk about immigration and the border all day long, and Biden. Biden had a very good economy, and Trump is, dumping this economy into the shitter. And so, you know, and he won't even tell you about it because the government's closed, so you can't even find out how bad this economy is. But these
Right.
tariffs are killing us. And if you wind up focusing only on immigration, you miss the big picture on the other big part of it, you know,
Mm.
and people don't come, well, I'm only doing this. They're doing a whole lot of things. And you have to admit that, you know, that there's something to that, that it can't be only about immigration, as mad as he is about it. And, you know, that's his major issue. But there's this other stuff too. And so people tend not to be one issue voters. And when you talk to them and listen to them,
Hmm.
you know, they tend not to be one issue voters. And, you know, again, like George W. Bush and John Kerry, if you can direct the conversation to something that's a little bit less than immigration, the border, and Joe Biden's record, or if you want to take it in a different context, Biden's record on Afghanistan withdrawal, just that one
Hmm.
thing, which didn't go well, and forget about everything else that happened, you're not going to get anywhere.
Mm.
You got to change the conversation and move it to, you know, some of these other areas where there's more common ground. And that's okay because most people don't, in fact, only care about one thing. Well, the polling says that uh, this is the most important issue. Okay.
But
But
even
what about the
there, you
nine
should
other
be
issues? You care about
right.
those too. And
Even
what if
there,
we
it's
agree with
not
you on
that clear
nine, but
which one
not
it
the
is.
others? Well, you know, but this is the most important issue. Fine. But again, it's not just about the issue. It's the magnetism thing. If you
Mm.
like the guy, and you know, the rest of it falls into place or is close enough to what you can deal with, then you'll go with it. Again, you know, politics is a team sport, not just in terms of you have to have everybody else saying the same thing. You know, Republicans get their votes because Fox News and every other channel, including family and the president that they listen to, all say the same thing. It's
Hmm.
also a team sport in the sense of you know, let's say football, New York Jets versus Boston, New England Patriots.
All
Okay.
right.
If the New England Patriots cheat a little bit and steal some signals or deflate a football, and you're a Patriots fan, you will absolutely, positively, 100%, I guarantee you, overlook it.
Yes.
If the Jets did the same thing, they're awful, they should be banned from football,
Right.
yada, yada, yada. You know,
Well, they are awful and they should be banned from
politics is a
football.
team sport. So if you're for Trump, you're going to overlook like 90% of what he does for reasons.
Yes.
And it's okay
Well,
just to
even though they're
gently point
terrible.
that out to somebody. You know, if Biden did the same thing, in fact, he did do the same thing. You said it was terrible. Now Trump is doing the same thing. You say
Oh,
it's good. What's up with that? You know?
well, yeah. Oh no, now I'm a hypocrite. That sucks. Don't tell me that.
No, no, don't tell them they're a hypocrite. Just
I just say
mention
you.
the, you
I
know,
didn't say
the
that. You
thing.
said that.
Plant the seeds. Let them come to their own
Right.
conclusion.
Are you accusing me of being a hypocrite? Dad, no, that would be you. I'm just telling you
No, I'm just telling you
this
you're a liar.
happened and that happened and they're the same thing and why do you like one and you hate the other?
Right.
Hypocrisy was your idea.
Now, here's another way.
Yeah.
And this comes from
Hmm.
this NPR story, which is in all the local papers, and it's a big deal here
Hmm.
in Newtown and Connecticut overall.
All right.
I'll just read you the NPR headline. Supreme Court rejects Alex Jones's appeal of Sandy
Hmm.
Hook shooting defamation judgment.
There you go. That's it. It's over.
Okay.
Yeah.
$1.4 billion judgment against Alex Jones. He said it was too much. He took it to the Supreme Court. He lost.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Straightforward enough.
I think so.
But there's a very important lesson here.
All right.
Cross out Alex Jones, put
Yeah.
in Donald Trump,
Yeah.
he wins.
Yeah.
How do we know this? Already happened with Letitia
Right.
James.
Yes. Right.
Point being that the Supreme Court, for whatever their reasons are,
Yeah.
in looking at the unitary president and thinking the president should have the power to do this, that, and everything else, untethered and unencumbered by things that the little people put in his way,
Hmm.
does not automatically apply to his minions, mooks, followers, and other hangers on.
True.
So you're discussing, and this came up in the discussion yesterday. And I said to the guy, you don't always have to make it about Trump. You know, what about Stephen Miller, who's awful, just
Hmm.
an awful human being? Or
Yeah.
what about, you know, a vote who's the office management budget guy who's trying to cut all the government jobs and fire everybody and doesn't want to pay troops. I mean, the people who work for him are not immune. They don't have magnetism. Stephen Miller does not have magnetism.
Not at all, no.
And they're very open to the idea that, okay, he doesn't surround himself with great people.
Even though that's what he says.
It's not just a good way to steer the conversation. It happens to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And, points out some of the bad things that are happening. And, and that's where you get to, well, I like what he says, but I don't like what he does.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the package, unfortunately. So,
but Alex Jones is proof. I mean, and you can't assume that well, Trump is immune, and the Supreme Court has made it so that even after he's out of office, you won't be able to go after Trump. Fine, go after everybody else.
I guess that would be a way of. Well, all of that needs to be cleaned up regardless. Anyway, it would be much more satisfying to also be able to get after Trump. But I guess if you can't, but the Supreme Court will afford you ways to sidle up to it and put everybody else away or deal with everybody else.
Again, Mamdani put this in the article, and he said it in so many words. Look, the question isn't being right. The question is you have to win.
Yes. Okay. That is true.
So if you have a case, and
here comes the lawn care.
Trump and DOJ doesn't do this anymore, but it used to be true. If you have a case you don't think you can win, you don't bring it.
Right. No.
James Comey, Letitia James, they do.
Yes.
Because they don't get it.
Right.
And their goal is, emotional distress to the person they're trying to go after.
Yes, that and headlines that they've been indicted, and that's supposed to work too.
Et cetera.
Right.
But you don't bring a case you can't win, but you can win, is what I'm saying, against people like Stephen Miller.
Yeah. Well, eventually. At the moment, he's shielded, and who knows what can be.
As a matter of fact, just to make a point of that,
all right.
I saw a story that the Attorney General in Arizona.
Yes. All right.
Is talking about suing Mike Johnson for not seating Dalit Grijalva.
Yeah.
No taxation without representation or something or some sort.
Well, so is that going to be the basis of it? Is everybody going to get a tax rebate?
We're unrepresented, and you're not allowing us to be, and you're doing things that affect us, and we don't have a representative, and that's not legal. You can't do that.
Right. I don't know if it's going to reach the
taxation. What's the law? I don't know. What's the rule? I don't know. But
well, I think that's got to be coming to an end now. It'll be really interesting to see what else, if anything,
Republicans
Johnson
are turning
does
on Johnson.
to.
There are House Republicans are saying this is stupid. We can't be doing this. How are we back home and this is all going on and we're not even in Washington? Your strategy sucks.
Yeah, well, that's good news. And doesn't take that many Republicans splitting to make something happen. But they have to be there in order for most of it to happen. But yesterday, I believe, all the mechanisms to make the whole thing official and generate all the paperwork that stands behind an assertion that someone has been elected to the House of Representatives has been completed and forwarded to the clerk of the House. At this point, Johnson can still say, well, when the mail gets here and the clerk's office opens it and they process it and they send me a note and the note was read by staff and staffers give me the note, then I'll know that there's no real reason left to delay. And at that point, we'll, schedule a swearing in. So that'll give them another couple of days, I guess, and it might stretch it into next week. And I don't think that they've suspended votes for next week just yet. So I imagine that they'll get around to swearing her in and just pretend that, well, that's the way it is. We were waiting for official word from the state. No one can fault us for that, except that they never wait for that official word. It's usually just, well, we feel like it was pretty
only
certain.
For Democrats.
Yeah. Although they've sworn in some Democrats that way too, which is why they point to it and say, no, this is the way we do this all the time. Don't tell me it's
not
partisan.
About the people who get sworn in right away. It's about the people who don't get sworn in right away.
And there's only this one at the moment.
So it's the Democrats.
Yeah, well,
And what's happening is that every single time it comes up, the Arizona people are saying what everybody else is saying. We're suing because you don't want her sworn in so that you can keep the Epstein file secret.
Yeah. Well, it's,
if you thought that Epstein story was going away, it's never gone away.
It can't. When this is looming, And of course, yeah, right. Well,
It's like swift boating. It's
why
just
would
in
the
there.
story-
You
That's
cannot
true.
get rid
It's
of it
baked
out of the
in.
public conversation and thought process now.
Nor can you separate Republicans from it. They're all,
Right.
carrying
They're all
this
part of the
burden
cover.
now. Yeah. Okay.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just what's happening. Take a look.
That's
And if you don't think I'm
true.
right, how come that they won't seat Adelaide Grijalva? I'm sorry, but that's just what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, there was no damage to be done in seating her if you're also out of session. So go ahead. I don't know why the delay. I don't know why you took that extra burden on. You can seat her. She signed the petition, and then you say, well, there you go. Now we got 218. Yeah, but we're not in session, so we're not going to be considering the resolution anytime soon.
1 minute.
So,
Okay, I got to go.
all right.
Some construction decisions need to be made.
Yeah, I would say measure twice is usually the
Measure 3 times and then don't do anything.
right. The
That's
rule
one.
of 3. That's
Rule
right.
of 3.
Right.
Okay,
In
anyway,
fact, stop polling all these
enjoyed being
decisions.
back, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Greg. Good to have you back. We'll check in with you again tomorrow. And good news here is the lawn care appears to be over right outside the window. So that's good news. I was trying to do a little bit of microphone monitoring there, but I realized it's probably actually more annoying. That sound keeps going in and out as opposed to just being background noise. All right. Well, break coming up, so I don't want to get into anything too complicated at the moment, but I will take note of a couple of stories. Oh, something I wanted to mention yesterday. I don't have anything more to report other than the fact that there are a lot of complaints that people aren't reporting it and discussing it. But sympathies going out to the populace of Western Alaska. We just want to note for the record, because they're kind of looking for people to note for the record that this thing has happened. But the remnants of a typhoon have made their way up that direction and devastated certain areas of Western Alaska, sweeping homes off of foundations and into the water, and there are people missing. And for a couple of days, some pleas from the population of Western Alaska: please pay attention to the fact that a major disaster has happened here. The president certainly won't be giving us any attention there, possibly largely because they are native populations that are affected, but we've seen it. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, we ran out of time to say to get that message across. We've seen it. We've seen your pleas. We hear you. Hopefully there's resources on its way to you, but these days, with the federal government being what it is, I don't know whether there's a FEMA to respond, whether they would respond, whether Donald Trump would permit people to respond unless they were aiding Republicans. So I don't know. But I had seen that story by Monday, I guess, and it was on the agenda for hey, just maybe a quick mention at least on Tuesday, and it just did. We were just flooded with so many other things, and we still have stories to get back to that are late in coming, stories that haven't finished, but I wanted to make mention of that so that those of you perhaps inclined to make contributions toward relief funds such as may be available to help out in Western Alaska know about it. And just generally speaking, the plea was, hey, we're not getting any attention. How can you ignore that and not give it attention? Anyway, the actual story of it, just in case it's just reaching you, it's entirely possible. I have the Alaska Public Media reporting on it, I guess the local NPR affiliates, etc. Alaska Public Media's Eric Stone and Liz Ruskin covering the story here under the headline of "Officials Say Storm Completely Devastated Western Alaska Communities." And so, obviously worthy of some notice and assistance. The U.S. Coast Guard commander for Western Alaska compared the devastation in local villages over the weekend to the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Scale-wise, I am sure several of these villages have been completely devastated, absolutely flooded, several feet deep. Captain Christopher Culpepper said at a news conference on Monday, this took homes off of foundations. This took people into peril, where folks were swimming, floating, trying to find debris to hold on to in the cover of darkness, no less. The remnants, as it happens, of Typhoon, is it Halong? Halong? I'm not great with typhoon names either, as it turns out. Halong, barreled into remote coastal communities in the Yukon, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Oh, it's my best attempt at the native naming, I guess, on Sunday, bringing hurricane force winds, one might even say typhoon force winds, and record floodwaters. Coast, and by the way, I mean, also wasn't the moon nearly full too? Like a lot of storm damage on the East Coast as well, where of course all the major news publications are, so that got a little bit more attention. But just, a full moon, high tide, storm surge combining to just, make everything that much worse on both coasts, as it turns out. And let's see, what else? Coast Guard and National Guard crews. They still have a National Guard in Alaska. They haven't been commandeered and sent to Chicago yet. Have rescued at least 51 people so far from two of the hardest hit communities, Kipnuk and Odur. Quigillingok, my guess at that one. And you want to know how that one's spelled, by the way? KW, that's tough off the bat, KWIGILLINGOK. So, goodness gracious, and we'll have to say it again. Troopers said Monday evening that a woman missing from Quingillingok, maybe, had been found dead, unfortunately. Another two people from the village remained unaccounted for. So, it's serious. Way serious. About 1,400 survivors were staying at community shelters. Like, that's just about everybody in some of these places, right? It's been very scary, very, very scary for folks, said State Emergency Operations Center head Mark Roberts. A total of 49 communities have reported impacts from the storm. Officials said. Roberts and others at Monday's news conference said they're still taking stock of the damage, but the storm destroyed dozens of homes. And, all over the news coverage here is the destruction of, like, beach vacation homes in the Carolinas. But these, and they would have, hopefully all the mortgage paperwork on those things is just fine. Bill Pulte will get to the bottom of that, no doubt. But not the case out in Western Alaska. Primary homes. Not a lot of, second, third, fourth Airbnb vacation homes, I don't think, under threat in that area. Roberts and others at the Monday press conference said, as again, storm destroyed dozens of homes. Some of them just floated right off their foundations with the families still inside. Several people called the state's Emergency Operations Center for help. I guess you can still do that by cell phone while you're floating away, but the landline won't work, if there are even any out there. At this point, there's no point in guessing that most people will have a landline in their house no matter where they live at this point. The folks that were in houses that were floating and didn't know where they were was one of the most tragic things our folks in the state EOC have ever faced, Roberts said. Imagine getting that call. Okay, well, we'll come and help you. Where are you? I don't know. We're floating. I mean, where to just start? I guess that's the next question. The storm also cracked Kipnuk's runway so that planes, to help, cannot land, and snapped a lot of utility poles in half, leading to continued power outages, Bethel State Senator Lyman Hoffman said. And then the story of the search and rescue efforts, just so you know the size of the operations going on there, locating every missing person, still the state's top priority, Roberts said. Major General Torrance Sachs, S-A-X-E, the head of the Alaska National Guard, said he activated every member of the state's National Guard, none to spare, Chicago, and Alaska State Defense Force living in western Alaska, totaling 60 to 80 people. State officials are also calling up more personnel, largely from Fairbanks and Anchorage, he said. This may end up being the largest off-the-road system response for the National Guard in about 45 years. Dozens of nonprofit organizations, businesses, and faith-based groups, including Salvation Army, Red Cross, Samaritans, Purse, and World Central Kitchen, they're even there, are also coordinating recovery efforts with the state. Roberts said, "We're coming." Roberts said, "We're going to have folks there to help you." hopefully sooner rather than later. Of course, it's difficult. It's a difficult and remote area to respond to with heavy equipment. But again, I guess there's some suggestions too. Who's helping out? Salvation Army, if you're into that. Red Cross, if you'd rather do that. Samaritan's Purse, I'm not even all that familiar with, although I feel like I've heard the name a couple times. And World Central Kitchen. Like I said, they are everywhere. Most people will feel pretty good about making donation to one or more of those groups. Governor Mike Dunleavy has declared a disaster for the region, easing access to additional resources. We think, traditionally that's supposed to ease access to other resources. It will ease access to other state resources. Will it help at all with federal resources? There's only one way to find out. Ask Annoying Orange and see what he says. That's where we are with the unitary executive these days. Well, anyway, he goes on to say, we're going to do everything we can to get everything up and running as quickly as possible, and we'll continue to help, not just today, tomorrow, but weeks and months on end until we get things back to what used to be at least considered semi-normal. I guess doing his best not to raise expectations with that. Holy cow. So what kind of flooding are we talking about? Just a couple of stats for you. At Kipnook, the water reached 6.6 feet above the normal high tide mark. And there's not a lot of places to retreat to when that happens. The previous record was 4.7 feet, and that was back in 2000, so almost 2 feet higher than what we had seen before. So, it's fairly serious. Some photos of the damage. Coast Guard evaluating the environmental impacts as well. It's a long and involved article meant for, I guess, local consumption. But there you go. So thanks to the folks there. Eric Stone and Liz Ruskin reporting for Alaska Public Media. So now I think we're at least up to date on what's happening and where you might turn if you wanted to help out in Alaska. I guess a common thread we could build off of there is another story here in Instapaper for me to share with you, since we're talking about declaring disasters in local areas. Here is a new twist. ABC News and Leah Sarnoff reporting that Los Angeles County has declared a state of emergency. Have they had, is it fire? Is it flooding? Is it famine? Is it locusts? Is it frogs protesting? No. But that's the closest one, as a matter of fact, to what happened here. Los Angeles County declares state of emergency over immigration raids. That is really an interesting twist. The subheader just tells us that the declaration was passed on Tuesday by a 4-1 vote. I didn't even know they usually voted on declarations of disaster. But it's not the governor doing it, and it's not the mayor of Los Angeles doing it. It's the county. So I guess that's got to be done by the county board. The county officials voted on Tuesday to declare a state of emergency over ongoing federal immigration raids. And by the way, illustrating the piece with dramatic, locally produced video of some of these raids going on and the things that ICE is doing to try to carry out some of these arrests. In this case, a video of an ICE vehicle chasing down a vehicle of someone they wanted to arrest and speeding through the streets. That's never good. 2 large SUVs through residential neighborhoods. And then the ICE guys saying, what we'll do is we'll ram this other SUV in order to bring in our suspect. Suspected of what? Nothing in particular. They just looked funny to us. Anyway, here's the story. This proclamation gives the county the power to assist residents they say have been impacted financially by ICE actions, right? Everybody's too scared to go to work, can't go to church, bring their kids to school, any of these things, take care of themselves, do the shopping, because they're afraid they'll be snatched up by ICE. That's a fairly significant impact in their lives. Interesting, the local reaction. I think, probably wise. I'm glad to see them exploring this action and getting some attention for it. The declaration was introduced by County Supervisors Lindsay P. Horvath and Janice Hahn. It's a big time these days for Lindsays everywhere. And passed by a 4-1 vote with Supervisor Catherine Barger opposing. Not sure what Catherine Barger's story is, or who she is, or what her opposition was about. Don't jump to conclusions just yet. We'll find out later, I'm sure. Los Angeles County is home to over 3 million immigrants, according to the supervisors, who said the ICE raids have caused widespread fear and led to decreased attendance at workplaces, disruption of local economies, that will result, and strain on critical services such as schools, hospitals, and places of worship. So we largely got it right up front, by guessing and being, informed about the situation. Rent relief for tenants who have fallen behind as a result of the ICE raids and money for legal aid and other services are among the provisions in the declaration. That will be needed, of course. I'm sure ICE and Stephen Miller were looking forward to the idea of being able to use those missed rental payments and ensuing eviction notices as something to piggyback ICE raids on top of. If we have to dispatch the sheriff to evict somebody, once you actually boot them out of the house, ICE will scoop them up and take them to detention. I'm sure they were looking forward with glee to doing something like that. The vote on Tuesday allows county supervisors to mobilize resources, request state and federal financial assistance. I guess they probably won't get that, to respond to the impacts of the raid and expedite contracting to address the crisis. What's happening in our communities is an emergency, and Los Angeles County is treating it like one, said Horvath in a press release. Declaring a local emergency ensures that the full weight of county government is aligned to support our immigrant communities who are being targeted by federal actions. ICE raids started in Los Angeles early in June, prompting demonstrations that at times turned violent. I guess ABC News felt it was necessary to include that. And I don't know exactly what they're pointing at, but might not be unfounded entirely. They didn't say Donald, so I can just skip that. While Trump's deportation push was initially said to be centered around undocumented immigrants with criminal records, an NBC News analysis of data in July showed exactly what you think it showed, that the Trump administration has arrested an increasing number of migrants with no criminal convictions. They're not interested in that. That's a cover story. For months, families have lived under threat and workers have been taken from job sites, Horvath continued. This proclamation is about action and speed. It allows us to move faster, coordinate better, and use every tool available to protect and stabilize our communities. That's the job. We will continue to stand with our immigrant neighbors today and for as long as it takes. The emergency declaration will remain in effect until terminated by the board, according to the release. So we'll see how effective that is in helping people. We'll see how effective that is in pissing off Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. I don't know whether they're going to care. I don't know whether they're going to react or whether they're going to, it's petty for them to react at this point, but that's par for the course. So I expect that in the days to come, we'll say, well, if you declare a local emergency, there's not going to be any FEMA help. I can promise you that. But we'll also start withholding money from California, from Los Angeles County. They'll be canceling grants and infrastructure projects. And I'm sure they'll be saying, can we audit the supervisors? The IRS should audit the supervisors who voted for it, something like that. They'll look for ways to retaliate and make the situation worse. It's what they do. But I think this is an interesting and possibly will become a major development and a flashpoint, possibly. So now you're aware of it. So there you go. And as people who were discussing it on social media were saying, it is could be a major inflection point, right? Local government declaring a disaster because that it's necessary in order to mount a defense of local citizens against their federal government. One of those things one of those tyrannical situations, the yoke of which is supposed to be thrown off at some point by a liberty-loving people. Anyway, I just thought that was a good point and maybe a good follow-up since we were, talking disaster declarations anyway. All right. Let's see. Anything else new that might have been parked in the meantime? Lots of other things to catch up on. Smaller bits of news that should be added to the mix. The United States, I guess the Navy, it says military. We'll see which branches of the military were involved this time. I mean, presumably the Navy. It's another attack, another blowing up and killing of people on Venezuelan boats in the Caribbean. U.S. military kills another 6 people in 5th Caribbean strike, Trump says. He loves talking about it, has no compunction about it, for whatever reason. In a social media post, because that's the most appropriate place to talk about murdering people, the president said people aboard a boat were suspected of smuggling drugs, naturally, this is working for them, for an unspecified group. I mean, really, why not even just say it's Tren de Aragua? Who cares at this point whether you're lying about which gang they're in? But, all right, just in case, I don't know, unspecified group that his team has labeled terrorists, which is amazing also, right? We declare these people to be terrorists. Who? I'm not telling. Are you serious? That's where we are now? All right. Charlie Savage has this story for the New York Times, which has got to be pissing him off to no end, but we'll see how much of it comes through in the reporting here. He's a consummate professional, and he doesn't tend to gloss over those sorts of details. The United States killed 6 men aboard a boat in international waters, quote, just off the coast of Venezuela, President Trump wrote on social media on Tuesday, asserting without evidence that they had been transporting drugs. The strike was the 5th known attack by the U.S. military on such boats since September 2nd. That's now 27 people killed as if they were enemy soldiers in a war zone and not criminal suspects, which they ordinarily would be, but then you would have to produce evidence. So to hell with that, we'll just call it a war instead. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was, here we are, Trump on his social media. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was trafficking narcotics, was associated with illicit narco-terrorist networks, and was transiting along a known route for smuggling, i.e. a boat on water. Thanks. That's really great. He also posted, Trump did, a 33-second aerial surveillance video showing a small boat floating and then being struck by a missile and exploding. He loves nothing better. Unlike some previous announcements, the president did not identify the nationality of the people who were killed or name a specific drug cartel or criminal gang with which they were supposedly associated. They're just blowing them up for reasons. Since Mr. Trump and his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, started the operation last month, a broad range of legal specialists have called the premeditated and summary extrajudicial killings illegal, because that's generally the label you attach to premeditated and summary extrajudicial killings. That's what they are. Thank you, Charlie. They noted that the military cannot lawfully target civilians, even criminal suspects, who do not pose a threat in the moment and are not directly participating in hostilities. That would be an apt description of all of the people that they've killed in this manner so far, including the last 6. The Trump administration, and by the way, 6 on a boat. It's 11 people on a boat, evidence of drug trafficking. 2 people on a boat, evidence of drug trafficking. 6 people on a boat, evidence of drug trafficking. I mean, come on already. The Trump administration has asserted that killing suspected drug smugglers rather than having the Coast Guard interdict boats and arrest people aboard them if suspicions of drug smuggling proved accurate. Because where are we going to get to that stage? Accurate and proved? That's too much trouble. All of that would, of course, be consistent with the Trump administration has this. Okay, it wouldn't be consistent with the laws of war. But the sentence reads in its totality, when it's put together correctly, that the Trump administration has asserted that killing these people is consistent with the laws of war. It's not, but they are asserting that it is. But in addition to that, the administration has, not released any detailed legal analysis in support of that conclusion. Charles L. Young III, or III, as the miracle of artificial intelligence would tell us, Mr. Trump's nominee to be General Counsel of the Army, though he's not yet, I guess, General Counsel of the Army. He's just waiting for his nomination to go through or be confirmed. Well, he said at his confirmation hearing last week that he had seen a memo by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, for those of you who know, about the operation, but he did not disclose its legal analysis or arguments. I saw the memo. What did it say? I can't tell you. Is it because it's classified? Maybe yes, but also because I don't. It was gobbledygook. I don't know what it said. The administration's public explanations have nodded toward different legal concepts and terms without explaining why they apply to suspected drug smuggling. You know, the key part of legal analysis. For example, Mr. Trump last month signed a letter to Congress, allegedly, informing lawmakers of the September 2nd strike, which he said killed 11 people aboard a boat as a matter of, quote, self-defense. And here, it won't make any particular difference, certainly not for those 11 people, to do this. But again, I remind you of what I was calling for the first time around in the first Trump administration. There's a lot of written correspondence between the president, allegedly, the operation, the greater White House operation, and Congress. And Congress is consistently receiving and processing these written communications from the President of the United States. But I would stop assuming that he's actually making these communications. And I guess if you wanted to be fair about it, in most of these cases, in a normal presidency, yes, there are staffers preparing these statements, bringing them to the president for signature and saying, yeah, basically this is, I'll catch you up with a short briefing. The president trusts that these people are genuine in what they're bringing them and are accurately reflecting what's in the document, and they'll sign them and dispatch them. But, you know, most presidents are capable of understanding a brief explanation of what's happening, and the staffers have a tremendous interest in describing it to them accurately. I don't know that that's happening in the Trump White House. Technically, you had no real reason to know that it was happening in other White Houses. It's just that was standard protocol, and these guys just don't give a crap about standard protocol. And I think we all suspect that Stephen Miller and Stephen Miller types are just saying, the old man has no idea what it is. If we just tell him it's a super MAGA thing, he'll sign it, and we can be president instead of him. And he wants us to be president instead of him, really, when it comes to doing the paperwork. So, there's not a lot you can do, of course, from the minority, but, there's a small function that usually goes unnoticed in the House and Senate when these written communications are received from the White House. They're just usually announced, and, the clerk is receiving them and they're processing them. But there are, there's always opportunities to question what's going on, even if you can't block these presidential communications from being officially received and processed or acknowledged to be presidential communications. But there's always opportunity, if you're there and on the floor when this stuff is announced by the clerk, to make a parliamentary inquiry. Are we sure that this is a written communication from the president? That's what the clerk says. But I mean, is anybody sure that the president has any idea that this has been produced in his name? Does it do anything to make such an objection? Probably not, since if it came down to it and you forced a vote somehow on whether or not the Congress or each house should recognize this as a written communication from the president, you would lose that vote because presumably it would be on party lines. But, hold up the works. Put on record that this unusual thing is happening inside of Congress every time the White House sends what they you'd have to report it this way. When they send what purports to be a communication from the president, and really, if you read it, you'll say, that doesn't sound like our president. Doesn't sound like the guy I know. Yeah, because it's a staffer. Well, sure, but that's par for the course. Isn't that always what happens? Yeah, but generally speaking, if you asked the president, hey, how about that declaration you just sent? Oh, yeah, I've been briefed on it. Not this guy. So ask those questions. All right. Back to the actual article itself. Again, Charlie Savage for the New York Times reporting, after a strike on September 15th killed 3 people, the administration sent a different kind of notice to Congress, declaring that Mr. Trump had, quote, determined that the United States was now in a formal armed conflict with various Latin American cartels and gangs that his team had labeled terrorists. Have they? Have they filled out the correct paperwork? Is he agreeing with them? Does he sign the thing? Does it make any sense? Well, the answer to all of that is no. Suspected drug runners for them could be lawfully targeted as, quote, unlawful combatants, the administration wrote. Now, why can that happen? How can they do that? Well, we do have laws on the books, for better or for worse, that say the president can make that determination, and that determination is, in fact, entitled to a certain amount of deference from the other branches. But, of course, how much deference do you give a guy who thinks there's such a thing as a 1,500% discount? I come back to it. I'm going to keep harping on it. You think it's not the same issue? Mental state has got to have something to do with this, don't you think? Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got to get through the rest of this Charlie Savage article. It's another one of the major important things that are happening that you just can't believe we're having to debate at this point. But it ties into everything else, the deference issue, the presumption of regularity issues that keep coming up. So it ties into all these things, and all of these court cases, whether they are about this military action or the ICE activity in snatching people up off the street, or various other things, any number of things, including declarations of emergency for disaster aid, any number of things that the president says they can do. Now the newfound, newly created immunities for the president, that all of this sort of depends on these declarations and insistence on deference to the president and the unitary executive and all of that. And I just remind you that one of the built-in assumptions to refer to it again, the presumption of regularity, one of the built-in assumptions about this deference to the president and the president's ability to make these determinations, it's not really the case that we're supposed to afford this deference to the president because that person, he, and one day she, is the president, though we sort of feel that way, but that's because of the presumption of regularity. Normally we presume that, the president is operating normally, by which we mean getting good advice, fully considering the various factors, and being of sound mind, and being, having an interest in administering the executive business of the republic fairly and without prejudice and bias. All of these things are sort of built into the presumption of regularity. Now that's being disrupted left and right. You're not deferring to the president merely because they're the president, but because you're deferring to a person who's presumed to be operating regularly. in the presidency. We're deferring to what we presume is a mentally competent decision-making process, and one that is free of partisan politics. But none of that is bearing out with Donald Trump. Yes, he's said to be the president, but it shouldn't be an automatic presumption. And it's a defeatable presumption. That's just, I think, part of the presumption of regularity, or part of the regularity that surrounds that, I guess I would say, is that there, ordinarily you can't attain the presidency without being a mentally competent person, because people would examine your record and there would be debates, and people would say he's wearing a boot on his head, or he paints his face orange. That can't be real. Or I don't pay taxes because that makes me smart and you would squander it. Well, surely you would not be voting for such a person. And yet they did. So, okay, fine. The keys have been turned over to this person. But it's not necessarily the case that they're sober and fit to drive. What about that part of it? And I guess that's really where the trouble arises. And where you're reminded, these are all rebuttable presumptions, but they just never get rebutted because, honestly, in the 250 years we've been at this, well, not the presidency, but in the 200 plus years that we've been at this with the constitutional structure that we've got, it was very difficult to overcome the debatable presumption of regularity and deference, because it would have been impossible in any real and meaningful way to establish as a matter of fact before a court that the president seeking this deference, the president enjoying this presumption of regularity, was in fact not acting regularly and wasn't upholding the standards of decision making that we ordinarily do afford this deference to. It would have been an impossible task. Now it's just all too easy. The only thing is, we're not used to not granting it, and we're not sure what parts of the government and acts of governance would collapse under the weight of finding out that the presumption of regularity is dismissed across the board and deference ought to be questioned everywhere. We're just not sure how to do that. It's never been done and never had to be done. There have been places where these presumptions have been overcome in very narrow and specific cases, and say, well, it's not because the president is mentally unfit to the task, it's that this paper wasn't signed. So it was a discrete issue. Well, all right, we can correct that. Let's sign the paper. Well, yeah, you can do that going forward, but it's too late in this case. So this whole thing is dismissed, and you can try to come up with charges that will encapsulate the problem and start over again from scratch, or you just say, all right, got off on a technicality. But when we're talking about everything that the government is doing based on executive authority being, having that authority evaporate all of a sudden, going forward and retrospectively, I'm not sure how courts deal with that. So they just haven't been. They just haven't. But they're beginning to be forced to do it. All right, back to the article. Congress has not authorized any armed force against drug cartels, and the administration's designation of various criminal groups as, quote, terrorists is novel and contentious because they are motivated by illicit profit, not ideology. In any case, the law that permits the executive branch to label foreign groups as terrorists authorizes tactics like freezing their assets, but does not convey legal authority to attack them militarily. But that's just law talking. The administration has not explained how a boat in the southern Caribbean Sea, far from the U.S. coast, posed the kind of imminent threat of armed attack that could prompt a right to use force in self-defense. And, I guess to the extent that Trumpies would say, "No, that's just a lie, you're lying," it's definitely something. Well, all they're claiming is, well, they're far from the coast, but they were bringing drugs from one place that isn't America to another place that isn't America. But eventually those drugs, which we allege are on the boat, and we can't prove they're on the boat, and we don't even know what kinds they are, who's carrying them, will make their way to the United States. Whereupon, it does damage to the health of Americans. It may even kill them. And with fentanyl, of course, just saying the word, cops drop dead. But hey, there's a lot of, missing connective tissue there. But yeah, can we all agree drugs are bad? Yeah, this is your brain on drugs. Look, it turns this into a delicious fried egg. How terrible is that? You know what that does to your cholesterol? That's crazy. But this is all there is to it. Well, drugs are bad. Those are drugs, are they? Never mind that. Let's say, for the sake of argument, they are. So they're doing a thing which is bad. Eventually will be bad here. And so, I don't know. No, all of that goes out the window. Yeah. Even if it were all true, it doesn't authorize military force in this case. Yeah, but it should. That's really all that underlies this stuff. Nor, back to the article, has it, the government, explained how smuggling an illicit consumer product, he's mad about this. It is a consumer product. Illicit, but yes. How does smuggling an illicit consumer product count as the sort of hostilities that under international law shift to armed conflict rules from human rights ones? In peacetime, the authorities arrest criminal suspects and can use lethal force only in defense against an imminent threat. In war, it's lawful to target enemy fighters based on their status, even if they pose no threat at the moment. In his posting on Tuesday, Mr. Trump did not mention self-defense or a purported state of armed conflict. Instead, the president invoked his constitutional role as the head of the U.S. Armed Forces without further discussion, saying he had authorized Mr. Hegseth, whom he calls the Secretary of War, that's well written, to order the strike. So again, the whole question of deference, the whole question of, is the president mentally competent to do this? Like, even if you don't think, well, he's not insane. Let's say you think he's not insane. So that's not the issue. Is it? You could, this seems highly technical, but you could reduce this to a paperwork issue, right? All of this stuff that the administration is claiming, well, technically we're at war with the drug cartels because the illicit consumer product that they bring can and does kill Americans eventually. Sometimes through their own actions, their own fault. But I don't know, if you want to make some sort of causal connection between the drugs that are coming in and those deaths, that's tenuous. But if you want to accept that and then declare that therefore means that these people are at war with the United States because they're killing Americans, that would be one thing. So the president at that point has to say, I'm authorizing this strike because those are foreign, hostile combatants. And that's why we're going after them. Instead, all he's saying is what he's always said. I have an Article 2, which says I can do whatever I want as president. And one of the things I want is, because I'm also commander-in-chief of the military, I want the military to kill those guys. If you stop them and say, well, you want to kill them because they're enemy combatants. Oh, yeah, sure. Whatever it takes, But the president really needs to have a clear understanding of what all of that connective tissue is, or else the deference that he says he's entitled to because he's the president. No, you're supposed to be a mentally competent president who understands what they're ordering. What about the presumption of regularity? Well, if he keeps skipping over major connective tissue in matters of ordering people's extrajudicial deaths, then no deference, no presumption of regularity. There's no reason. Why don't I think he's able to make that connection? Because in an open forum, which he owns and runs, and upon which there are no limitations to his speech, no words that are restricted, no word count that prevents him from doing any of these things, he simply won't make those connections. He can't. I don't think he's capable of doing it. And there's no evidence that he is. And were someone else to write it for him, it still wouldn't answer the question, because he's got to be able to mentally evaluate all this stuff. We're deferring to his determinations because the presumption regularly is that he's thought about this stuff and consulted with people who have thought even more deeply about it. He doesn't have to be the subject matter expert, but he's not consulting with anybody. He's just signing what's put in front of him. What do I have to do to get through this and get to the golf course? And when you're murdering people with it, maybe you throw out all these presumptions. Maybe you test them. Maybe they're subject to strict scrutiny once in a while. Although what would be subject to strict scrutiny really would be the claim that he's no longer entitled to these things. But I think we could probably get past that too. Not with this Supreme Court, but with a real Supreme Court. Are you kidding me? You think he's really evaluating this stuff and balancing the issues correctly? I tend to doubt it. But this Supreme Court will just say, he just is. Anyway, we wrap up this piece here with a quote from whoever handed this thing to Trump and typed it into Truth Social for him. Under my standing authorities as Commander-in-Chief, this morning, the Secretary of War, which we don't have, ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with a designated terrorist organization, DTO, conducting narco-trafficking in the U.S. Southcom area of responsibility. So, Mr. Trump wrote, quote, just off the coast of Venezuela. So that's the end of the story. But again, only technically do you have to do things this way. How does it appear in writing? Quote, under my standing authority as Commander-in-Chief this morning, the Secretary of War ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with a designated terrorist organization conducting narco-trafficking in the U.S. Southcom area of responsibility, unquote. Mr. Trump wrote, comma, quote, just off the coast of Venezuela, end quote, end of story. How does it really need to be printed? Someone said the words, under my standing authorities as Commander-in-Chief this morning, Secretary of War ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with a designated terrorist organization conducting narco-trafficking in the U.S. Southcom area of responsibility. Quote, Mr. Trump, unquote, wrote, just off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, do you think that was Mr. Trump writing it? Is it ever the president writing it? No, usually, well, not never, but most times no. But again, there are different presumptions that we make for people who we think probably got briefed on this and understand it, and people who the evidence tells us have not. Is it enough to rebut that presumption? Not yet, because there's always going to be 6 votes for allowing it to go forward. But in the lower courts, you could probably get away with it, because there are judges who are saying, I'm begging you, please challenge the presumption of regularity. I'll allow it. I may even rule in your favor. I will waive this deference, because it's not due deference to this guy, not the way he's thinking, not the things he's doing, not the gaps he's got in his legal reasoning. The opportunities are there. I don't know. I know you might worry about the 6 overturning things. Make them do it. Let them contribute to the deterioration of the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. You know, if you think you're going to lose anyway, make a record of it and build the case for, I don't know, mildly speaking, expansion of the Supreme Court in the future, if we ever get there. All right. We're done with that one. There's lots more that needs sharing. I'm going to sort of thumb through some of these things and see which ones need to be prioritized. There's a lot. One of the things that we didn't get to is we were reading and didn't finish the old piece about the Egyptian allegations of Egyptian corruption that Rachel Maddow was noting with is that why all of this activity wrapping up the Middle East jaunt was held in Egypt? And maybe, although, we left in the middle of this story, which is very intriguing all by itself, and so I feel compelled to finish it up because it was extremely long. We didn't get to the end of it. Although I will say that in thinking about the time that we had spent on it yesterday, it occurred to me, well, if all that's come of it at this point is, well, we'll allow Egypt to host this meeting, then so what, I guess. But I guess probably the bigger question is, really, though, what would Donald Trump feel like he owed Egypt if they bailed out his campaign with a big $10 million boost at the end of 2016? And you'd think it would be much, much more than just this meeting. So I think we may have to keep our eye out for more about this. But we were learning about the investigation that was ongoing into the first Trump administration, but that had been launched just prior to his winning the election the first time. Hey, I think we got something here, and there's some weird movement of money, but the official investigation doesn't launch until after he's president. And then, I guess, Bill Barr, just as he did with the Russia investigation, tamps down on the whole thing and pulls the levers in relatively quiet fashion to close down this investigation. Whereas, now they just do it with blunt force, as with the Tom Homan bribery story. But I think we left off in reading the section about adult supervision being necessary. I think that was Bill Barr speaking. That Jesse Liu, the U.S. attorney for D.C., was asked to handle this case and basically had to come to the conclusion of, well, there might really be something to this that we can't just shut down altogether on our say-so. There's just too much smoke here. How you want to handle it in the end, why, I'll, happily consult with you, Mr. Attorney General. But for now, we need to at least go through the motions of following the money, without fear or prejudice or passion, etc. What do you think? And the answer was, we need some adult supervision in the room. And of course, we learned also some of the ironic stuff about, Christopher Wray, nominated to head the FBI because Trump had fired Comey, would weigh in and help out with the winding down of this investigation, only to find out that, he's still being investigated anyway, just as Comey was. But for different things, because we'll just need some other trumped-up charge to bring you under our thumb. Anyway, the adult supervision section of the article we were reading, which I'll remind you is a Washington Post piece from August of 2024, the $10 million cash withdrawal drove secret probe into whether Trump took money from Egypt. Reported more than a year ago, the activity took place in 2016 through 19, but involved Mueller investigation. They set off a squad, Team 10, to try to investigate this. I mean, it was taken rather seriously, and a pretty serious record was compiled on it. Then came the adult supervision. In April of 2019, the FBI agents and federal prosecutors proposed a plan to drill deeper. People familiar with the investigation said they eyed a range of investigative targets in Egypt, such as seeking additional bank records and witness interviews. But in the FBI agents' view, the people said there was little reason to take those steps unless they could act on the most important part of their plan, looking at a wider set of Trump's banking records. Remember that? And that part of the plan proved the most contentious. In a series of meetings in April, beginning in April, FBI agents and supervisors told Liu they supported a proposal to subpoena Trump's banking records, according to contemporaneous notes of the discussions. Liu had concerns about the scope, the notes say, Investigators pressed their case with Liu. They argued that Mueller had not authorized his agents to obtain records later than November of that year, 2016. In light of the newly obtained cash withdrawal records from early 2017, investigators argued that they needed to see what had landed in Trump's accounts after that 2017 Kagro withdrawal, according to notes and people familiar with the case. I think we actually put this part on the record now that I think about it. Was it the next section that we had to skip down to? Yeah. Anyway, basically they said, all right, we think we know about all of this weird money oddly being withdrawn from bank accounts in Egypt. Where did it land? And they were being forbidden from asking or answering that question. Where did it land? I guess maybe we ought to skip down to the bottom part or the next section. Case closed. Let's talk about that part. What happened there? By late 2019, Liu's office was poised to make sentencing recommendations for high-profile senior Trump advisors that it had prosecuted for other things. Who were they? You may remember international super spy Michael Flynn. His first national security advisor. And also, a guy accepting spy payments from around the world. And Roger Stone, remember him? Those two cases, of course, were ones that could tarnish Trump and his campaign. This time, the 2020 campaign. That December, the White House nominated Liu to be Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Department. Do you all remember, by the way, this episode in Jessie Liu's life? She was leading this investigation. It was going places. It was looking like it would damage the entirety of the Trump administration. And they said, you know what? You should be promoted to a brand new job. Oh, really? Great. Okay, sure, fine. Oh, well, by the way, while your nomination is pending, by rights, you should resign your job as U.S. Attorney to concentrate on your confirmation to this new job. Because nobody in a Trump administration holds more than one job at any given time. Duh. Okay, sure. So, Barr seized the moment to make a change, breaking with the tradition of allowing White House nominees to remain in their current posts until confirmed for new ones. He ordered Liu in early January of 2020 to step down by the end of the month. People with knowledge of the matter said the White House then withdrew Liu's nomination. You see what happened? You remember the story, I think, probably from when it happened. We were kind of, weirded out by that at the time. For the administration who has people like Marco Rubio occupying 16 different jobs and God only knows how many others occupied by others in the administration. No. You got to resign from your job as U.S. Attorney to concentrate on getting your nomination through as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Department. Okay, fine, I'll do whatever you want. Resigns from U.S. Attorney job. Oh, by the way, we're withdrawing your nomination for this fantastic new job as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Department. You're out, but we didn't fire you. You resigned. That was your choice, not ours. Yep. Well, at any rate, Barr then installed a longtime ally, Timothy Shea, who was then serving as counselor to Barr and had previously worked with him in the George H.W. Bush administration. At one of Shea's first meetings, the office's senior leadership briefed him on major pending cases and outlined the Egypt probe as their proposed subpoenas for Trump bank and foreign bank records. Shea told them he was putting a hold on any investigative steps while he got up to speed, people with knowledge of Shea's instructions said. After the meeting, investigators discussed, why would you allow me to read the rest of this article without instead a full-page pop-up that covered everything there was? Thank you very much, Washington Post. All right, so after this meeting, investigators discussed their feelings that Shea's reaction to the Egypt case was so negative that it spelled the end of any forward movement, the people said. They did not return to press Shea for those subpoenas. Maybe that's on them. Shea declined to answer any detailed questions from the Post. He told associates that he had not conferred with Barr about the case, according to two people familiar with Shea's description of events. Barr, however, grew disappointed with his hand-picked chief prosecutor for a separate reason. According to people familiar with Barr's thinking, Shea allowed attorneys in his office to recommend a lengthy prison sentence for Stone, who had been convicted of multiple felonies, which, generally does lead to a lengthy prison sentence. Less than 4 months after appointing him, Barr replaced Shea with Sherwin, a former Navy intelligence officer who spent a decade prosecuting counterintelligence. Oh no, another full-page pop-up. Boy, oh boy. Jeff Bezos, what are you doing to me? It spent a decade, Sherwin, and we don't even know who Sherwin is. I guess it was mentioned earlier in the article, and I've forgotten. Former Navy intelligence officer who spent a decade prosecuting counterintelligence and terrorism cases before becoming an advisor to Barr. In a meeting in the first week of June, senior leadership once again reviewed major pending cases with the new acting U.S. attorney. People familiar with the case said Sherwin listened to the status update on the Egypt probe. Prosecutors had not been able to gather any new information for months, but they argued to Sherwin that there were still steps in the case that they could pursue. By the way, it occurs to me here that you are talking about a new acting U.S. attorney, and as we know now, and no one, I guess, raised the issue then, that may or may not be legally permissible, but they might have been able to save it by putting Sherwin's name in for nomination to occupy the job permanently. Not sure whether they did that or not. Anyway, Sherwin told the team the lack of evidence meant that the case should be shut down. With some resigned to that outcome, no one spoke up to object. People familiar with the discussions told the Post. On June 7th, he sent an email to the head of the FBI's Washington field office. The subject line of the email, which was reviewed by the Post, was Egypt investigation. Based on a review of this investigation, he began his office would be closing the above matter because neither an indictment nor a conviction was likely. Back when that mattered. In an interview with the Post, Sherwin said the Biden administration appointees, including Attorney General Merrick Garland, who took over the department months later, could have relaunched the probe if they had disagreed. The case was closed without prejudice. Anyone could have reopened the case the second I left office, but it didn't happen. Incoming Biden administration DOJ leaders and prosecutors in the D.C. office were immediately consumed with cases from January 6th, the largest investigation in the department's history. So you could say there was just too much coming through the fire hose for them to do both. That would be explainable, but then that all came to naught because Trump pardoned everybody anyway.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
So just to conclude here, on January 15th, 2022, 5 years later, after the money left the bank in Cairo, the deadline for bringing charges under the federal statute of limitations for illegal campaign contributions expired. So we're up against that one again. All right, time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We'll take another crack at things tomorrow.